Keir Starmer wants to be Britain's next Prime Minister, but these 5 heated moments show exactly who he really is. Let's break this down.
You're sitting there with tens of thousands of people. But just
when
let me finish.
illegal migrants come to our country, what will you do with them?
Processed their
it's a very
claims.
simple question.
Well,
I can tell people what I will do with them. I will put them on planes to Rwanda because they shouldn't be able to stay.
Years.
What will you do with illegal migrants who come to our country? What will you do with them? It's a simple question.
His plan is
what will you do with them?
They need to be processed at the moment.
Processed?
They're not. These
which
claims
means giving
are not
them,
being processed.
to be clear, will mean most of them will be given asylum. They will get the right to remain in this country.
At the moment, 100% of them are effectively being granted asylum in this country because they can't go anywhere. They can't go anywhere. They cannot. The Prime Minister knows this, and if he thinks I'm wrong, he should say so. Because they're not being processed, they cannot be returned to where they came from. Can they, Prime Minister? If he wants to correct
Rishi Sunak?
now's his chance to do it.
They cannot be returned. Well, do you know where these people come from?
No, he's not answering the question.
Do you know where
you
they
can
come
see
from?
that.
Iran,
you can see.
Syria, Afghanistan. So when Keir Starmer says he's going to return people, is he going to sit down? Are you going to sit down with the Iranian ayatollahs? Are you going to try and do a deal with the Taliban? It's completely nonsensical.
Watch Starmer carefully here. When pressed about illegal migrants, he can't give a straight answer. Notice how he dodges the simple question, what will you do with them? This isn't just awkward, it's telling. Now that was painful to watch. But if you thought that was bad, watch how he handles the complete collapse of Liz Truss's government.
The mandate she's ever had is from members opposite. It was a mandate built on fantasy economics and it ended in disaster. The country's got nothing to show for it except the destruction of the economy and the implosion of the Tory party. I've got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility, gone. And her supposed best friend, the former Chancellor, he's gone as well. They're all gone. So why is she still here?
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter. I am a fighter and not a quitter. We have delivered on the energy price guarantee. We've delivered on the energy price guarantee. We've delivered on national insurance. We are going to deliver to stop the militant trade unions disrupting our railways. The honourable gentleman has no idea, he has no plan, and he has no alternative.
While Starmer's attack on Truss might seem powerful, look at his own record. Every policy he criticizes here, he's actually U-turned on similar issues himself. The irony is almost poetic. He loves listing other people's failures, but when someone brings up his own past, watch his reaction when Boris mentions his IRA connections.
This is a leader of the opposition who backed remaining in the EU and now is totally silent on the side. Now has performed a U-turn. He backed, and perhaps he still does, Mr. Speaker. This is a leader of the opposition who supported an IRA condoning politician who wanted to get out of NATO and now says absolutely nothing. This is a leader of the opposition who sat on the front bench whilst there was anti-Semitism.
I think there are questions being asked. We do need to try and answer the questions that's being put to the Prime Minister. It will be helpful to those who are watching to know the answers.
Mr. Speaker, before I go on, the Prime Minister said something about the IRA, and I want him to take it back. I worked in Northern Ireland for 5 years with the police services of Northern Ireland, bringing peace. I prosecuted the Director of Public Prosecution, serious terrorists, for 5 years, working with the intelligence and security forces and with the police in Northern Ireland. Asked the Prime Minister to have the decency to withdraw that comment.
I think, in fairness, I'm sure you would like to withdraw.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to say that I think that I listened to the protestations of the Right Honourable Gentleman. I think they would have been more in order throughout the long years in which he supported a leader of the Labour Party.
Leave it as it was. Yes.
When the Prime Minister has worked with the security and intelligence forces prosecuting criminals and terrorists, he can lecture me. I asked him to do the decent thing, but doing the decent thing and this Prime Minister don't go together.
This heated exchange exposes something crucial. When Starmer's past comes up, watch how defensive he gets. Yes, he worked in Northern Ireland, but notice how he never addresses his support for Corbyn's IRA sympathies. Notice how quickly he gets defensive. But there's another side to Starmer. When he thinks he has the moral high ground, like during Partygate, suddenly he becomes a different person entirely.
What a joke. Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. But the damage is already done. The public have made up their mind. They don't believe a word the Prime Minister says. They know what he is. As ever with this Prime Minister, those close to him find themselves ruined, and the institutions he vows to protect damaged. Good ministers forced to walk away from public service, the Chancellor's career up in flames, and the leader of the Scottish Conservatives rendered pathetic. For all those unfamiliar with this Prime Minister's career, this isn't some fixable glitch in the system. It's the whole point. It's what he does. It's who he is. He knows he's dishonest and incapable of changing, so he drags everybody else down with him. The more people debase themselves, parroting his...
Order! I can't hear what's being said because you...
This might be Starmer's strongest moment, but remember, this is the same man who was photographed drinking beer during lockdown. The difference: he got to investigate himself. All that righteous anger about following rules. From the man who had his own lockdown investigation. But let's see how he handles being called out himself.
Because you're making joke. Mr. Babrican, I'm all right. Keir Starmer.
She looks desperate.
What I would say is I think the leader said dishonest. I don't think that's an appropriate word to be... I think I will make... We don't want to talk about breaking rules, do we? I don't think that's a good time to discuss. I just say, I think if he just withdraws that and works around it, I'm sure that with the knowledge that he's gained over many, many years, he can use appropriate words that is in keeping with good temperate language of this House. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I respect that ruling from the Chair. The Prime Minister knows what he is. And so he drags everyone else down with him. The more people debase themselves, parroting his absurd defences, the more the public will believe all politicians are the same, all as bad as each other, and that suits this Prime Minister just fine. Some members opposite seem oblivious to the Prime Minister's game. Some know what he's up to, but are too weak to act. But others are gleefully playing the part the Prime Minister cast for them. A minister on the radio this morning saying it's the same as a speeding ticket. No, it's not. No one has ever broken down in tears because they couldn't drive faster than 20 miles an hour outside a school. Don't insult the public with this nonsense. But, Mr. Speaker, as it happens, the last minister who got a speeding ticket and then lied about it ended up in prison, and I know because I prosecuted him. And last week, we were treated to a grotesque spectacle. One of the Prime Minister's loyal supporters accusing teachers and nurses of drinking in the staff room during lockdown. Members opposite can associate themselves with that if they want. But those of us who take pride in our NHS workers, our teachers, and every other key worker who got us through those dark days will never forget their contempt. Plenty didn't agree with every rule the Prime Minister wrote, but they followed them nonetheless. Because in this country, we respect others. We put the greater good above narrow self-interest, and we understand that the rules apply to all of us. This morning, I spoke to John Robinson, a constituent of the member for Lichfield. I want to tell you his story. When his wife died of COVID, John and his family obeyed the Prime Minister's rules. He didn't see her in hospital. He didn't hold her hand as she died. Their daughters and grandchildren drove 100 miles up the motorway, clutching a letter from the funeral director in case they were questioned by the police. They didn't have a service in the church. John's son-in-law stayed away because he would have been the forbidden seventh mourner. Doesn't the Prime Minister realise that John would have given the world to hold his dying wife's hand, even if it was just for 9 minutes? But he didn't, because he followed the Prime Minister's rules. Rules that we now know the Prime Minister blithely, repeatedly and deliberately ignored. After months of insulting excuses, today's half-hearted apology will never be enough for John Robinson. If the Prime Minister had any respect for John and the millions like him who sacrificed everything to follow the rules, he'd resign. But he won't, because he doesn't respect John. He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame. Looking past the member for Lichfield and the nodding dogs in the cabinet, there are many decent, honourable members on the benches opposite who do respect John Robinson, who do respect the British public. They know the damage the Prime Minister is doing. They know things can't go on as they are. And they know it's their responsibility to bring an end to this shameful chapter. Today I urge them once again, don't follow in the slipstream of an out-of-touch, out-of-control Prime Minister. Put their conscience first. Put their country first. Put John Robinson first. And remove the Prime Minister from office. Bring decency, honesty and integrity back into our politics. And stop the denigration of everything that this country stands.
And this final clip shows Starmer's true colours, quick to mock others, but when pressed on actual policies, suddenly not so confident. And when he can't attack the argument, he attacks the person.
Has the time not come, Prime Minister, to prescribe what is so obviously a terrorist organisation, and in doing so, not just do the right thing, but maybe mend some fences between this government and the incoming presidency of Donald Trump's, given that the whole of his cabinet have been so rude about him over the last few years?
Well, I'm glad to see the honourable member making a rare appearance back here in Britain. He spent so much time in America recently. I was half expecting to see him on the immigration statistics when we see the next batch. But he may have missed. I did congratulate the incoming president last week.
These aren't just political spats. They're windows into how Starmer handles pressure, confrontation, and most importantly, the truth. Britain deserves to see both sides of the story.